Ever had that feeling, maybe walking across a muddy field, where your boots just start sinking?
Oh yeah, that unstable feeling.
Exactly, like the ground's giving way. Well, imagine your whole house doing that.
Not a good image.
No. Luckily, though, there's this kind of silent guardian underneath our homes, the footing, working away to stop exactly that.
It's a really good way to put it. Footings, they really are the unsung heroes, aren't they? They're the base, the absolute base that the foundation and, well, the whole house sits on. They're just fundamental for stability long-term and preventing, a whole mess of problems.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going deep on the rules for house footings.
Right.
We're using the 2024 International Residential Code, specifically Section R403, as our guide. And we found a really clear resource from
InterNACHI guide is pretty helpful for simplifying the code language.
Totally. Think of this as your quick guide to understanding this, well, really vital part of a house. Maybe you're a homeowner, just curious about what's holding everything up.
Or a builder wanting a quick refresher.
Or maybe you just find it fascinating how buildings actually, stay standing.
Our goal really is to demystify footings a bit. We want to get into why they're so essential, where exactly they need to go, what determines how big they are.
And how they handle different situations like bad soil or freezing weather.
Exactly. It all comes back to ensuring that solid foundation we pretty much take for granted.
Okay, so basics first. What exactly is a footing?
Right. So essentially, a footing is a thick pad, usually concrete.
Okay.
Though sometimes you might see crushed stone or even masonry used. But the main job is to take all the weight of the house.
Which is a lot.
Oh, tons, literally. And spread that weight out over a bigger patch of soil.
Ah, okay. So instead of a narrow wall pressing down, it's spread out wider. Like using snowshoes on deep snow versus just boots.
Precisely. That's a great analogy. That spreading action is key. It stops the house from settling unevenly or tilting.
Right.
Or developing those cracks you sometimes see. And, in really bad cases, it prevents structural failure.
Wow. Okay. The InterNACHI, the article mentioned 4 acceptable ways. The 2024 IRC says you can support exterior walls. What are they?
Yeah, the most common by far are standard concrete or masonry footings.
Right.
You also have crushed stone footings, which can work in some situations. Then less common, you might see wood foundations or other approved structural systems.
But those sound more specialized.
Definitely. They need specific engineering and approvals to make sure they meet the code. But for most houses, you're looking at concrete or masonry.
Got it. So whether it's poured concrete or packed stone, the job's the same. Hold the weight up, spread it out, keep things stable and level.
That's the core function.
Yeah.
Now, where do they actually go? You can't just put them down on any old dirt, right?
No, definitely not. So what is acceptable ground?
Well, the code says it has to be either undisturbed, natural soil, basically, ground that hasn't been dug up or messed with,
Okay.
or engineered fill. That soil that's been brought in, compacted really well, and then tested by engineers.
Tested to make sure it's strong enough.
Exactly. To confirm it can handle the weight. So you can't just dig a hole, throw the dirt back in, and, tamp it down with your feet.
Right. No shortcuts like that.
Absolutely not. That loose soil just won't give you the solid, consistent support you need. The article mentions ACI 332 as well, calls it the footings rulebook for concrete pros. What's that about?
Ah, yeah. Think of ACI 332 as the detailed instruction manual for concrete footings. It covers everything, how to mix the concrete properly, the techniques for pouring it, even when you need to add rebar, steel reinforcement, for extra strength.
Okay, so it's a quality standard.
Pretty much. It ensures the concrete itself is up to the task.
So we know what they are and what ground they need, but how big do they need to be? It can't be one size fits all.
No way. It depends on, quite a few things. The article lists the building width.
Wider building, more weight to spread.
Makes sense. Also, the construction materials. Like a brick house weighs a lot more than a standard wood frame house.
Right. Significant difference.
Then there's roof load, snow load, especially in colder places. And critically, the soil type again.
Back to the soil. Clay, sand, rock. They all hold weight differently.
Vastly differently, yeah. Some soils are much stronger than others.
And the IRC has tables and stuff to figure this out.
It does. Apparently loads of tables. But the key thing is the minimums. The absolute minimum thickness, according to the guide, is 6 inches.
Okay, 6 inches thick. Minimum.
And that might need to be thicker for heavier houses. And the minimum width is 12 inches.
12 inches wide.
Yeah, and that gets wider as the building gets wider, too.
Okay. What about basements or crawl spaces? Do they change the footing size?
Oh, definitely. They add a lot more weight because you've got those heavy foundation walls going down.
So basements and crawl spaces need bigger, beefier footings compared to, say, a simple slab-on-grade foundation, which is
It,
much lighter.
it makes sense. Now, what if the ground itself is just bad soil? What does that mean, and what do you do then?
Yeah, that's where you absolutely need an engineer, no question. Bad soil could be things like loose fill, just dirt that's been moved and not compacted properly. It settles.
Okay.
Or expansive clay. That stuff swells when wet and shrinks when dry, which can heave foundations up and down.
Yikes.
Yeah. Or really soft sand or silt, which can almost liquefy under load. And some clays, compressible clays, just slowly sink over time. All big problems.
So engineer territory for those.
Absolutely. And the other huge rule here is about frozen ground. Why is pouring on frozen ground such a no-no?
Ah, yes. Frost heave. It's crucial. You should never pour footings on frozen ground. Ever.
Why not?
Think about water freezing. It expands, right?
Right. Ice takes up more space. Exactly. So the moisture in the soil freezes, forms ice lenses, and pushes the ground upwards with incredible force.
Wow.
Yeah, if your footing is sitting on that, it gets lifted unevenly. Then when it thaws, it settles unevenly. Causes cracks, tilting, big headaches.
So need non-frozen ground. Got it. We mentioned foundation types affecting size. Can we just run through that again quickly? Slab, crawl space, basement.
Sure. So slab on grade, that's basically just a concrete slab at ground level. It's the lightest, so it generally gets the smallest footings.
Okay.
Crawl space foundations have those shorter foundation walls around the perimeter. More weight than a slab, so bigger footings needed.
Right.
And then basements, as the article says, they're the heavyweight champions. Full height concrete walls going deep into the ground. That's a lot of extra weight.
So they need the biggest footing.
By far. Need to spread that much larger load. And apparently, the IRC now specifically considers that basement wall weight in the calculations, which just makes sense.
Yeah, good that it's explicit. Okay, the article also mentioned a simplified load calculation, something about dead load and snow load.
Ah, right. It looks a bit technical, but the basic idea is simple. You take the dead load, that's the fixed weight of the house structure itself,
Okay.
and you add part of the potential live load from the roof. Usually that's 75% of either the expected snow load or the standard roof live load, whichever is bigger for that area.
Why only 75% of the snow load?
Well, it's sort of an efficiency thing. The absolute maximum snow load might only happen very rarely and not stay there for long. Using 75% ensures the footing is strong enough for typical heavy snowfalls without being massively overbuilt, which saves cost.
Okay, practical engineering. Let's circle back to those absolute minimums again. Size and depth. What are the non-negotiables?
Right, the baseline. No matter what the tables say for specific loads or soils, the footing under an exterior wall cannot be less than 12 inches wide.
12-inch wide minimum.
And it cannot be less than 6 inches thick.
6 inches thick minimum.
Yeah.
Got it. And depth.
Minimum depth below the ground surface is 12 inches. That just helps protect it a bit from surface soil movement, erosion, that kind of thing.
But that 12 inches isn't always enough, right? Especially with frost.
Exactly. If you're in a cold climate, that minimum depth goes way up. You have to dig down below the frost line.
The frost line being.
The maximum depth the ground is expected to freeze in winter in your specific location. Your local building department knows that number. It's often in table R403.21 in the code.
Okay, so check local requirements for frost depth. And the article mentioned decks have different rules.
Yeah, just a quick note. Deck footings, covered in a different section, R507.3, slightly different requirements there.
Good to know. Okay, let's dig into that frost protection more. We mentioned frost heave, pushing things up. Can you explain why it's such a big deal?
It really is a powerful force. As that water in the soil freezes and expands into ice lenses, it can lift foundations with thousands of pounds of pressure per square foot.
Seriously, thousands.
Oh yeah, it's immense pressure. And it doesn't lift evenly. So one corner might heave up more than another, then it thaws, settles back down, maybe not quite right. Freeze-thaw cycles can just wreck a foundation over time. Cracks, tilting, the works.
Okay, so how do you stop that? What are the main ways to protect against frost heave?
The IRC gives 3 main options. The most common, as we said, is just digging deep. Put the bottom of the footing below that local frost line depth.
Get it below where the ground freezes solid.
Exactly. That isolates it from the expansion happening above.
Makes sense. What are the other ways?
The second way is using insulation. You create what's called a frost-protected shallow foundation, or FPSF.
FPSF, okay.
Instead of digging super deep, You wrap the foundation with special rigid insulation, sort of like a blanket. It traps the Earth's natural heat and prevents the soil right under the footing from freezing.
Huh. Huh?
Yeah, it's engineered.
Yeah.
Section R403.3 in the code covers it. And there's an ASCE standard, ASCE 32, for it too.
And the third way?
The third way is if you're lucky enough to be building directly on solid rock.
Bedrock.
Yeah. Rock doesn't hold much water, doesn't expand significantly when it freezes, so usually no extra frost protection is needed there.
But even with insulation or rock, you still need that minimum footing depth, usually, like the 12 inches.
Generally, yes. Even with FPSF or building on rock, you often still need that minimum embedment, typically 12 inches, for basic stability. There's a rare exception for permafrost areas.
Like way up north.
Exactly. Where you might build on the frozen ground, but that's super specialized engineering. You have to make sure the building doesn't melt the ground it's sitting on.
Wow, okay. That's different. Now, what about building on hills? Slopes. The article mentioned rules for that.
Imagine trying to build a stable tower on a slanted table. Tricky, right?
Yeah, wants to slide.
Same idea with foundations. So the code is specific. The top surface of any footing absolutely must be level, perfectly flat.
Okay, top is level. What about the bottom?
The bottom surface where it sits on the soil can slope a little bit, but no more than 10%. That's a flip of 1 unit down for every 10 units across.
Okay, slight slope allowed on the bottom. What if the hill is steeper than 10%?
And you can't just run a sloped footing down the hill. You have to use stepped footings.
Stepped footings, like a staircase made of concrete.
That's basically it. You create level sections of footing, like treads on a stair, connected by vertical sections of concrete, like risers. This creates a stable, level base even on quite steep ground.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Prevents the whole thing wanting to slide downhill.
Precisely. Provides a solid level bearing at intervals down the slope.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot. Can we try and boil it down? What are the absolute must-know critical rules for footings?
Let's summarize. Okay, absolute minimum size, 12 inches wide, 6 inches thick. No smaller.
Got it. 12 by 6 minimum.
They have to sit on solid ground, either undisturbed natural soil or properly compacted and tested engineered fill.
Solid ground only.
Never, ever pour concrete on frozen soil. Big no-no.
No frozen ground.
In cold climates, you need frost protection. Either dig below the frost line or use an approved insulated foundation system.
Protect from frost.
Top surface of the footing must be level. Bottom can slope up to 10%. Steeper than that, you need stepped footings.
Level top, max 10% bottom slope, or step 'em.
Remember, basements generally need bigger footings than slabs because of the wall weight.
Basements, bigger footings.
And if the soil looks dodgy, loose filled, weird clay, super soft stuff, get a structural engineer involved immediately.
Problem soils mean call an engineer.
Right. Stick to those rules, basically.
And if you ignore these rules, what happens then?
Well, you're asking for trouble, really. An unstable house. That can mean cracks appearing in drywall or foundation walls, floors becoming uneven, doors and windows starting to stick.
Annoying stuff.
Annoying at first, but potentially leading to serious, expensive structural failure down the road. That's why inspections before they pour the concrete are so vital.
To catch mistakes early.
Exactly. Make sure those fundamentals are right from the start.
So it really does all come down to this hidden support system we never see.
Absolutely. Understanding footings, maybe it's not the flashiest part of building a house, but it's utterly fundamental. It's about ensuring that home is safe, stable, and lasts for generations.
Yeah, absolutely crucial. This deep dive into footings, into IRC R403, really hammers home how important these, well, often invisible parts are.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Considering how much we rely on this unseen support from footings, what other hidden things, maybe systems or even principles in our lives or society, provide that kind of essential stability that we just, take for granted most of the time?
That's a deep question. Makes you wonder. And now that you, listening, have this sort of foundational grasp of footings, what else about how houses work sparks your curiosity? Maybe digging into foundation inspections? Or the different kinds of foundations beyond slabs and basements?
Yeah, there's a whole world of engineering under our feet, quite literally.
Hopefully this has given you a solid footing in understanding these crucial components.
Indeed. It's all about building on strong foundations, in every sense.
Thanks for joining us as we continue to dig deep into the foundations of knowledge.